Now let me invite our second presenter, Mr. Dimitrios Chatzitheodosiou, who is a PhD candidate at the School of Film of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and a theatrical director. His presentation title is Entangled Presence at the Lyceum, Prosopon, Perichoresis, and the Civic Design of TechnoÞAIatre. Dimitrios, please.
So, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to speak today, this young scholars session at the Lyceum Project, about my theme called, as you heard, Entangled Presence, Prosopon, Perichoresis, and the Civic Design of TechnoΘAIatre. I want to begin with something that happened just a few days ago. A model became akin to a border. Yep. An AI model, a frontier AI system, was suddenly treated as a strategic object instead of an ordinary software or a product. It was treated something whose access, sorry, that was the first one, whose access could be restricted by nationality, geography, and security concerns. And this is the moment that matters, because it reveals a deeper political shift where concern is no longer whether we release the AI model into the wild, but it is about who controls the models. It is about who is allowed to think, act, and generate, to defend and coordinate it through them. So, my talk starts from a simple observation that artificial intelligence is moving from open intelligence towards guarded intelligence. And this shift immediately creates a paradox. The guarded model is built from unguarded humanity, we can say in a poetic form, because everything it knows comes from us, from what people have made, said, argued, remembered, digitized, and forgotten. It draws not only from the vast corpora of human civilization, the great cultural archive of literature, science, art, and philosophy, but also from countless and countless hours of everyday digital labor, searching, writing, tagging, translating, commenting, posting, even watching and scrolling. So today, the crucial point is beyond who owns the model. The crucial point is, how can the accumulated memory of the many return as a strategic privilege of the few? And this is exactly where the Lyceum theme this year, Entangled Intelligence, Ancestral, Artificial, and Animate, becomes really, really urgent. So let me begin with what I call the abundance trap. AI presents itself as abundance, an explosion of languages, images, code, reasoning, and capability. Yet this abundance is extracted from a shared epistemic commons and then handed back to us through artificial scarcity, through access tiers, through API gates, proprietary systems, compute gaps, and now geopolitical borders. The knowledge base is collective, but the control architecture is centralized. And this marks a contradiction of political and anthropological scale far more serious than the economical one. A centralized control that decides who can compute, who can generate, and even who can appear reasonable or real in the systems that now shape with exponential rate our public life. Abundance, then, doesn't automatically mean liberation. It depends entirely on the institutions governing it. So, entanglement, we are talking about it these 2 days. It has already happened. Let's take an example from theater. Picture a rehearsal room. An actor and the director in order to explore some staging, rhythm, and dramaturgical choices, they open a model and they ask some question. What comes back? It's not created from nothing. It carries fragments of theatrical memory, plays staged, text written, translation, discussions, and so on. And now it returns through a system that belongs fully to none of the people whose labor and memory made it possible. So ancestral intelligence already lives inside artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence already shapes the Animate practice, because Animate intelligence already feeds the machines with attention and feedback. So these three are entangled. And the only real question regarding this entanglement is what kind of entanglement we will allow: extractive or generative, enclosing or life-affirming, absorptive or truly relational. AI is becoming an infrastructure, much like electricity did, as in a recent OpenAI article is written. The comparison, though, is only helpful if we take it seriously. Electricity did more than make the old tasks faster. It changed what ordinary people could do with their days and lives. Well, AI does something more profound than that. It mediates meaning. And meaning is how we recognize one another as person, how we contest decision and appear in public life and claim justice. Access to AI is therefore greatly different than mere convenience. It's gradually becoming a condition of civil legibility. And to grasp what is happening, we need a short genealogy of enclosure. Copyright, patents, platforms turned knowledge into something more like land, bounded, excludable, tradable. So, generative AI technology takes this even further. It doesn't only enclose knowledge and content like in intellectual property, but it encloses generative capacity itself, meaning the ability to produce language, images, strategies, decisions at a grand scale. So, the new border forms around capability itself. A model becomes infrastructure that you may or you may not use, and the API becomes the gate through you do it. And a safety policy will become a political tool. This is why AI safety must be reframed as institutional design and not only a trivial procedure of technical control. Here we see what I call the model excluded class. You might have heard Harari's useless class. It names a real fear that many people will become more than unemployed, will become actually economically and politically irrelevant. And behind this useless class sits another older idea, the underclass, used by Myrtle to describe those left outside post-war prosperity and later sharpened in debates around welfare, mobility, and social exclusion. Yet today, this anxiety returns in the AI era. Dario Amodei has warned of a large-scale white-collar displacement, while writers like Kyla Chaika speak of a new permanent underclass. Terms. These terms matter, indeed. But they are not enough. The unemployed person, sure, he lacks a job. And the useless class lacks systemic utility. And the permanent underclass lacks pathways of social mobility. But the model excluded lacks access to accommodation itself. These people, or institutions, or cultures, or even countries are cut off the infrastructure that amplifies agency. You know, in the end, they are governed by intelligence without being able to participate in it. Economic equality, you say? These are past issues. We face a deeper fracture in the ability to understand, act, and defend, to contest, and even appear publicly. The response then cannot be to make humans useful again to the machine. The response must be to design institutions in which persons remain politically real beyond their utility. I am talking about institutions of relation. And this leads me to one concept I am very glad to popularize in every conference I go. It's called reverse alignment. We usually ask whether AI can be aligned with human values. In an AI-mediated society, we must also ask the reverse. How are humans being aligned to and by the AI systems? So, reverse alignment names exactly the process by which people gradually, over millions and millions of interactions, adapt to the system defaults and endorse what counts as helpful, responsible, safe, neutral, mature, or whatever. Defaults become a de facto pedagogy, and prompts turn into policy. So interfaces become institutions, and if interfaces are institutions, then we have a political question that emerges. Who has the right to revise the artifacts that are revising us? And here, Andrew Finberg, the philosopher of technology, whose work has been translated by our very own Mr. Perperidis and introduced to Greek bibliography, helps us greatly here, because he refuses technological determinism. He shows that technology is never neutral, as it carries values in its code, interfaces, and rules. Democratizing technology, therefore, means opening the design process itself to social participation. But Finberg takes us only part of the way. He asks how people can participate in shaping technology. But I want to add a second layer in the discussion via a new question. What kind of being is participating? Is the human being only a user or a consumer? Maybe he's a data subject, a worker, a profile, or a preference pattern. Or is the human being a person? This brings us to what I call the anthropological test of abundance. Post-labor economic thinkers helps us see the economic shift. Rifkin points to near zero marginal cost. Emad Mostak speaks of the intelligence abundance, and Daniel Susskind warns us that technological unemployment may be economically manageable, but social corrosive if societies do not create paths to meaning and contribution. Their common insight is that scarcity is moving. In industrial modernity, scarcity, as you remember, centered on goods, labor, property, and production. But with AI abundance, reasoning, synthesis, design, automation, and operational capability become better, faster, cheaper, and safer, and more widely available, at least technically. So, if access to that capability is gated, then scarcity didn't disappear, it just moved. And think about it. If material production via robotics soon and cognitive output become increasingly automated, value will move again. Where? Towards presence, relation, participation, and the capacity to appear to one another as person, as Yannis, Stavroula, as William, as Daphne, as Dimitrios. So the trajectory is not simply from poverty to abundance. It is from property to commons, and if we are brave enough in our community and society, from commons to communion. And this finally reveals the fundamental depths of the contemporary crisis of presence. The fear that people will become useless already accepts a dangerous premise, that human value depends on usefulness. Once we accept that, we have already lost. If automation reduces instrumental necessity, if we no longer need one another to produce, what then remains? it remains what I believe. What remains, I believe, is the face. Accountable, embodied presence. In a world of cheap synthetic representation, situated encounter becomes a scarce and precious good. It becomes almost sacred. And the question then shifts from how do we survive to how do we consist together? And this is why ancestral intelligence matters now. It's not nostalgia. It's not atavism, but it is out of the need for a richer vocabulary that can describe a phenomenon often flattened by the technical language, relation. You know, in Eastern Christian tradition, and especially in the work of John Zizouias, Metropolitan of Pergamon of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, the concept of prosopon is especially powerful. Prosopon means personhood as an irreducible face in relation. A person, it is not a benchmark. It is not a productivity profile. It is different than modernity's closed individual that tries to augment itself over and over. A person exists only as a who, as a person that relates towards someone else. If we define humans by intelligence or usefulness, AI will always threaten our worth. But if we understand the humans as prosopa, faces, the task changes. We no longer need to prove humans are more useful than the machines. We need institutions that recognize persons beyond function. There is no useless person, only institutions that have forgotten how to see them. The second key concept I want to talk to you about is called perichoresis. It's also prominent in Zizouias' work. Mutual indwelling without fusion or absorption means. Mutual indwelling, to live through the other, in the other. It's different than empathy. You know, empathy means to be in the shoes of the other and try to picture how he feels. Mutual indwelling is different. It means that I give you space for you to exist in me. And if you do the same thing to me, if you suspend your ego for a moment and let me inhabit yourself, then we have mutual perichoresis, allelo perichoresis. In, an AI commons then must not become a hive mind or a statistical average. It must enable shared capacity while preserving irreducible differences, shared capability and access, but never reduce personal cultures to extractable substances. Genuine creation, Zizouias would remind us, moves from thinghood to personhood. The danger is not that AI or machines will create art. The danger is that the systems reverse the movement, turning persons into things, faces into profiles, and presence into datasets and shadows. And that is why the patristic vocabulary matters without becoming a theological detour. From Saint Maximus the Confessor, I take the sense that reality is not raw material, but it is a meaning-bearing plurality. Logi. Logi means speeches, means lenses. So, analogously, if you think about it, a data set is not it's not neutral data. It is a wounded archive of logi, a wounded archive of speeches. So, also from St. Gregorius Palamas, I take another design distinction. Capabilities, much like energies, can be shared with everyone without capturing their essence. In AI terms, we can share access, capability, infrastructure, and participation without reducing persons or cultures into extractable substances. This does not mean, of course, naive openness. Safety is a real concern and issue, but The political question is the architecture of safety. One path is security by centralization and scarcity, the current model. The other is security by distributed resilience, redundancy, plural evaluation, public revision, and shared capacity to contest and defend. In centralized systems, alignment is enforced. In distributed systems, alignment is negotiated. The difference encodes very different assumptions about who we are: populations to be managed or persons capable of responsible participation. And this is where my own work comes in. TechnoTHAIatre. It is a civic simulation method. It's still in its early experimental phases, but it treats theater as a civic technology in accord with its origins. It creates spaces where communities can rehearse the system that increasingly rehearse them. The design draws on the ancient kilon, the sitting bowl. It's the one half. Here you see the double kilon. It's more like an arena. As a civic geometry. A living dilemma then is placed in the center. Participants enter small simulated scenarios to experience them with body, with rhythm, with choice and attention, and then return to the shared orchestra. Positions become embodied events. Trained human mediators, the stathmistes or calibrators, help translate the living field without replacing community's voice. And decisions emerge not simply as votes, but as rehearsed, felt, accountable verdicts. This method aspires to embody perichoresis in a civic form. It is applied philosophy. This architecture grows out of my wider practice based in research in Thessaloniki, the monopathy methodology of dramaturgy, and the theatrical work of Dioskuros Phoenix, which is a theatrical collective based in Thessaloniki, and the experiments with collective transformation in performance settings. All of these point to the same question: how does a group change its shared state? A group just like you. The operational heart of TechnoTHAIatre is the chorus assembly protocol. The chorus is coordinated plurality, that many bodies, voices are moving as in one shared field of attention without collapsing into one. Communities rehearse AI-mediated scenarios via a specifically trained neural net to surface normative harms as well as technical ones, and turn shared experience to durable, contestable artifacts, version prompts, local agreements, witness logs, revised policies, etc. But the deeper product, however, is not the artifacts. It's the common life under the technological mediation, the ability to meet truthfully again with one another before the system becomes an invisible environment. TechnoTHAIatre aspires not towards aesthetization of governments, because in a world where everything already has become too aestheticized, synthetic, persuasive, optimized, we refrain from the task to make politics more spectacular than they already are. The task at hand is just to make meeting truthful. So, closing, I promise. AI was trained on the memory of the many, and it must not return as the privilege of the few. If intelligence becomes entangled, we must rest assured that it does not become absorption. The aim is to move from markets of knowledge to infrastructures of relation, and perhaps further, from commons to communion. Our very Lyceum project here could be more than a venue for discussion. It can be a prototype. A civic form where ancestral memory, artificial mediation, and animate presence meet under conditions of attention and shared responsibility. So my final thesis is this: AI will either deepen permanent exclusion, or it can become a common infrastructure of relation. The question is not whether machines will become intelligent enough, they will. The question is whether this intelligence will remain hospitable to the relational person. And this is the civic purpose of TechnoTHAIatre, to rehearse in embodied and participatory ways the governance of systems that increasingly rehearse us. Thank you for your attention.